Okay, what you're looking at is the steering wheel has been put in primer. Now, I've been sanding this steering wheel for approximately 45 minutes. I've been sanding that, and what I've been using 80 grit. Now, the primer that I used on this is a high quality, very high build urethane primer. And it's a 2K primer, which means it requires a hardener.
Welcome to D.I.Y. Automotive School with my friend Pete and Minnie, the body shop girl. It's everything you need to know about cars and more.
I was going to go ahead and use polyester primer on this, which requires a fiberglass resin hardener, and I decided against that because that really isn't made for this type of a job. And when I say that, to use polyester primer properly, you have to put epoxy primer on the item first. And being that this is plastic, I didn't want to have to add more, what can we say, chemicals to the situation than I really had to. So I went ahead and used a high quality 2K urethane primer. And then I went back and I sanded it all down by hand. And this has been taking about an hour or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But I've been sanding all the grooves and I've been taking my time. And we have basically almost come to the next procedure of restoring our steering wheel. Now, this isn't our final sand job. We still got to bring it all the way down to 320 dry. But if you look at the steering wheel, you can see that it now looks like a new steering wheel visually. Now, from here, I see the imperfections that are still on here, but you don't see those. What we're going to do on our next step, you might call it, now that we've filled all our cracks in, we've removed every crack on here, there's no more cracks, we have primed our steering wheel and filled everything in with that. So now we're ready to go ahead and move on to our next procedure. And what we got here is we have now eliminated all our cracks. We've done that, I just mentioned that. So what we need to do now is we need to feather out everywhere that we eliminated our cracks, because this was a very high solid filler right here. I'm going to bring the camera up. I don't know if you can see that right there. You can see where it was filled in. And that is not a product that is a finished product. All right, so we got to use something where we can finish this out. And the way that we're going to do that, we're going to use this right here, which is a polyester finish glaze. And we are going to apply it by using our fingers. And I'm going to show you that. Now, it's going to get a little sloppy, and it's going to look a little messy, but we got to put it on here. We got to get it on here enough to where it fills everything to the qualification of feathering it all out so we can final prime it and paint it. Here's a bad area right here. I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to have to fill that in. And there's some other ones around the edges. And I can see them from here, but you can't see them. So let's go ahead and continue to restore our steering wheel. And I'm going to be honest with you people, this is a very time-consuming job. If you don't have the patience for it, don't do it. Another thing is, you might only work on this 1 or 2 hours a day because you're letting stuff dry. And when I say that, you're letting epoxy glues dry, you're letting the primers dry, this, that, and the other. Once I get done with this procedure, I got to re-prime this, and then I'll let it sit for 2 more days to make sure that the primer has shrunken and dried and cured 100% before I do any more final sanding to it. So it's a very time-consuming job, and you're not going to do this in 1 day or 2 days. It takes about a week off and on to literally restore. And this is actually an easy one. All right, this is actually an easy one. And this is glazing putty. One more time, this is not Bondo. You can actually use Bondo, but in this situation, we're going to use glazing putty. We don't really need Bondo. So we got our filler mixed up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the steering wheel very quickly. And before we do that side, we'll do this side. No, we'll do this. No, we'll go ahead and get this. So here's a spot right here. And you see how I'm doing that. There was another big spot over here. I guess we got it out. There's a spot right here. And the deal of doing this is you got to be quick because your polyester primer will dry on you. Here's a spot right here. But that's okay, we can always mix up more, so. So basically what we're doing, we're going around the steering wheel and we're finding where we filled it in and we're feathering all those spots out. And all we're doing is putting it on here to feather out the edges where we actually fixed our cracks. That's all this is for. Sometimes, I told you about using a brush. When you have a steering wheel that's seriously in bad shape, mixing up your filler and using a brush to put it on is the only way to go, because here's a spot, let's get this. And when you use the brush on it, it kind of brushes it on there and then flows it out. I think we got all of our bad spots. I'm going to go ahead, well, I can't. We got a spot right there, but we'll go ahead and sand that out. I'm thinking we might have to go back over it one more time. So I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and sand that. And then once we get that done, we're going to repeat our process one more time with our polyester filler, and then we should be ready to go ahead and reprime it. So you can see it looks 100% better than it did when we started. And all it takes is a little bit of positive attitude, a little bit of motivation, and a little bit of time-consuming situations. But the main thing that it requests and requires is that if you start something, finish it to the end. If you make a mistake, if you mess up, fix that mistake, get that mess up and cure the problem, and keep on going forward. If you get frustrated, if you get mad, if you get upset, walk away from it. Go do something else. I got bigger bags of Cheetos over here behind the camera that I got to get on besides this little, bag of fish fry. So there's always ways to cure the situation, and the main way to cure a problem when you are frustrated is to walk away from it and leave it alone. Put your noggin together, think it over, see what's happening in your head, and then come back and have a fresh opening idea about it that will make you do the job right. I know you can't see my face. I got the camera focused on this because this is what we're doing, and this is the most important thing. You don't need to see my ugly face. But I got to get this done. We're going to let that dry, and you can see that the filler is drying. So I like to let my filler dry summer or winter at least 2 hours. All right, so we're gonna wait a couple hours. We'll come back to this. I got other stuff to do. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and take our 80 grit, feather all this out. Then we'll sand it down with 180 to blend everything in, and we'll see where we're at then. but we can't lift the world up on our shoulders and accomplish everything in this much time, people. It takes time. You've got to let things cool down. You got to let them heat up. You got to get frustrated, because if you don't get frustrated and everything works out perfect, then you're living a boring life anyway. This is Pete, my friend Pete, your friend Pete, showing you how to restore steering wheels and also giving you vital lessons in life that you should follow and use, of techniques that will possibly save your life in the long run. Right here. Okay, we've let our filler dry, our polyester filler, and let me get out of this here. And what I've been doing is I have been meticulously sanding this and feathering everything out. It's starting to look so good that I don't actually remember where the problems were. And when you can't find the problems on it, that usually means that you're doing a pretty good job. So if we look right here, you can see where I put the polyester filler on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this block with some 80 grit, and then we're going to go ahead and feather that out and sand it down and get it all molded in. So I'm going to take the steering wheel and I'm going to go ahead and use my block to my benefit by squeezing it and manipulating it to fit where I need it. And I'm not going to sand too much. I'm just going to take my time so I can feather everything out. Go ahead and turn it over. And when you're using a flex block in your hand, it sands a lot quicker and more accurate. Doing this job actually takes a lot of patience. It's not the easiest job in the world, and it's not the funnest job, I can tell you that. We got one more right here. Look what I missed. It looks like I actually started on that and I didn't finish it. That's what it looks like. Now, if I was going to use my hand to do this, just my hand and my fingers, what would happen is I would sand around the filler and not really on the filler. So you got to really pay attention to what's going on. Okay, the steering wheel has really came out nice, and I think we're ready to go ahead and move on to the next stage, which is actually using 180 grit. We're going to go ahead and stop using our 80 grit. Let me get this scuffed up right here. Even though this doesn't show right here, you still got to sand it, because if you don't, when you paint it, it will be all blotchy and dry. So it's important to make sure that you sand everywhere that there was primer. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some 180. This is 180. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of sand, but on the other hand, I'm going to be polishing. So we're going to take it and let me get it in my lap over here, because this is where we actually need lap action going on instead of wooden table action. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am going around the steering wheel, and now I am using my hand. I'm not using the block yet. And what I'm trying to do is sand the steering wheel down to a nice smooth finish using my 180. And another thing, by using the 180, we're actually feathering everything out even more. So, very important. All right. I think we've removed all of the deep scratches out of our steering wheel. And I have one more spot that I got to put a little bit of filler on. I'm going to show that to you. But we have now taken our steering wheel down and it's ready to reprime so we can wet sand it and get this thing painted. Okay, we went ahead and primed our steering wheel. I put 3 nice wet coats on there. Now remember, I reduced my primer by 10%. I put 10% reducer in it. And then what I did is I went ahead and I put a guide coat on it, just like if we were painting a car. What I have here, I have 600 wet. This is the trick. We want to get the imperfections out of it. We want to make it nice and smooth, ready for paint, but we don't want to break through the primer into the plastic. The reason we're using wet sandpaper instead of dry, because wet sandpaper is not as, what can we say, as coarse and as rough on plastic. If we use a dry sandpaper on plastic, it's going to leave deeper scratches, you might say, than using wet. So it's very important to use wet sandpaper. I'm using 600. I could possibly go down to 800 if I want to, but here's the deal right here. We had a few imperfections where primer got messed up and there's a couple runs in it, and you can see a run right here. So before we do anything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of 180 dry and I'm going to wrap it around a piece of a paint stick. And then before I use my 600, I'm going to go ahead, remember I told you there was a run right here, I'm going to go ahead and sand that run out. And the reason we're using a paint stick is because we want to concentrate on sanding the run only. We don't want to sand everything around it. Okay, so we removed our heavy imperfections. Now we can move to sanding with our 600. So I got me a bucket of water down here on the floor, and I also got a sponge. We're going to bring our sponge up. That's saturated with water. And then I'm going to go ahead and get me one of my rubber blocks, which is right here, and we'll set that back down here. We're not using soapy water. We're not using all these fancy, ideas that people have. We are just block sanding so we can get this done. Another thing is I got a piece of cloth on my table because I don't want to move my steering wheel around and scratch it. So that's another important thing. So we're going to go ahead and wet that, and then we're just going to go ahead and block this out using our 600. Now I do got a block in here. This is a flex block. And to sand this with 600 is going to take a little bit longer than if you would have used 400. But the finish comes at the finish that we are trying to achieve, and to accurately get this right, we really have to use 600 on it. Now, if we accidentally burn through, that's okay. But we don't want to burn through the whole steering wheel. And I was going to go ahead and use single stage paint on this, but I'm going to go ahead and actually use base coat, clear coat on it instead. And I think we're almost ready to go in the paint booth with this thing. Get some paint on it and get it done. But it's going to come out really nice. I'm really happy with this restoration on this wheel. I think it's going to be an awesome restoration, and the owner's going to be really happy. All right, here we are in my paint booth, and I'm going to go ahead and plug my exhaust fan system in. And if you're interested in how to make your garage into a paint booth, if you're a guy that's doing this at home and you want to learn how I did it to get nice clean paint jobs, watch my video set on how to build a paint booth. Alright, so while that's kicking in, let's go ahead and check out the steering wheel, and let's look at the rest of it and see what I'm going to do to get this thing painted. So I got the steering wheel hanging up. It looks nice. You can see that I got a glove on one hand, and we're ready to put our sealer coat on the steering wheel. Now, the spray gun that I'm going to use to paint everything, including the clear, is going to be my Seda Mini Jet. This is an HVLP touch-up gun, and since we are painting a very small item, we don't need a full-size spray gun. This spray gun will work fine. I already got it loaded with epoxy primer, which is a sealer, not a primer. The name of it is epoxy primer. It's a non-sandable primer that seals everything up so you don't get no blistering, any imperfections, and it also actually fills in minor scratches. Let's go ahead and get this thing in sealer. Seda Mini Jet. I'm going to go ahead and repeat my process. What you just saw, I'm going to repeat my process with my paint and my clear, and then we will be done with that. We will not color sand and buff that, but we are going to, this is the trick right here to get a nice clean paint job, is to use your touch-up gun, your Seda Mini Jet if you have one, or what other brand you have. If I would have used a full-size spray gun on that, I would have wasted a quart of material in the air. You'd see there's no overspray, there's nothing going on, and that's because we're using this. I'm going to go ahead and paint that. I'm going to let it sit for approximately 3 days, and then we're going to come back and get a look at what the finished product looks like. This is Pete, my friend Pete, your friend Pete, showing you and telling you it's possible for you to do stuff, but you have to get off your ass and help yourself do the stuff that you want to do. See you later. Well, believe it or not, we are done with our steering wheel, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm really excited, and it actually came out awesome. Let's take a look at it. So here it is right here. This is the restored steering wheel that we started with. This is not a brand new steering wheel. This is the original steering wheel from the 1968 Mustang, and you can see it came out awesome. I ended up putting 4 coats of clear on it. Now, the trick to painting these is not using a full-size spray gun. The trick to painting these is using a touch-up gun, the small touch-up gun, like this one right here. Now, when it comes to the spray gun usage on that type of item, which we're talking about is our steering wheel, you don't have to have a $700, $800 spray gun. You can go ahead and go to Harbor Freight, buy the cheap, inexpensive, cheapo touch-up gun. But this is the ideal situation to finish your product off and make it perfect, because this will give it a nice even flow clear coat. It's a small item. By painting it with this, you're getting even flow, like I just said. You're also getting more even flow, and you could go ahead and apply the paint and the clear without getting any runs in it whatsoever. So that basically concludes our steering wheel restoration video. And I guess what we'll do, we'll go in there and stick it on the car. And yeah, really came out nice. We'll go ahead and stick it on the car so it ain't banging around sloppily, possibly maybe fall over. Let's get this thing on the car so it's nice and safe. I think the steering wheel really came out nice. Now, we really don't care how it sits in there because the owner's going to have to take it off anyway. He has to go ahead and re-chrome the horn ring, and he's got to put a brand new pad on it. And here's our horn ring right here. So this would actually go in here like this. Is how it would go. And then on top of that, or it would go this way, one of the two. It looks like it would go this way here because it locks in place. We'll go ahead and stick it in there. There we go. Oops. We'll go ahead and see if we can get it in there. If it'll lock in. There it is, right there. Okay, so that's where the horn ring goes, just like that. And as you can see, it's a done deal. We are done with our steering wheel. It came out awesome. I like the steering wheel. I think it's a beautiful steering wheel. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. I'll let the owner mess with that. But you kind of got the idea of what it looks like. So as I was saying, this is Pete, my friend Pete, your friend Pete, over here at DIY Auto School. Not just showing you paint and body stuff, but trying to show you other situations and other applications that might apply to what you're trying to do. The steering wheel probably looks better than brand new. You can kind of see what's going on now, and it really came out good. So we'll see you later. Take it easy. And before we go, we got another Mustang right here, and let me show you what's going on with this deal. You think that steering wheel was bad? Take a look, gander at this one. Can my friend Pete restore it? Can we take this GT Mustang, it's a GT Mustang steering wheel. Can we take that steering wheel and restore that steering wheel, that original factory GT steering wheel? I don't know. I don't know. It might be possible and it might not. But one of these days, we might find out. Take it easy, guys. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching D.I.Y. Automotive School. Classes don't stop till you know everything.